created essentially no new jobs in the last decade, and all we have done is explode the deficit. And our biggest burden now is we're just paying interest on this national debt. So we have to change the monetary system, we have to change our tax code, but we have to do something about these onerous regulations coming down. You know, whether it's Obamacare regulation or the financial regulation of Dodd-Frank or the EPA regulations or the regulations of the National Labor Relations Board. I mean, one company goes and they build a $4 billion plant in South Carolina, and boy, and they go down and they've already built the plant, and the president comes along and says, you can't do it. Where did he get this authority to all this stuff and say, you can't go into that plant after spending all this money, and they were going to create new jobs. It wasn't even taking jobs from their other plant. And he took the Constitution, turned it on its head, because the Interstate Commerce Clause was designed to make sure that we in the various states could travel back and forth and have trade between the states. But this is saying, well, we're going to restrict it, and they use that whole clause in the Constitution to restrict trade and travel and everything else we do. So they're using that wrongly, and it's just uniformly with the executive order in order to stop that. So we have to deal with all those to get the country growing again. But it won't grow until you get rid of the debt. If you're an individual, you're in trouble, and the debt burden is so great. If you're capable and you feel honored by them to do it, you'll cut your spending way down. You'll work harder. You'll get a second job. Maybe another member of the family will get a job, and you pay that debt down. When the debt is paid down, then you can grow again. You can go back and build again. The country is the same way, but we haven't allowed that. We don't apply those rules. And that is what's going to be necessary. Now, what we're doing now is what we did in the Depression, what the Japanese did back in the 1980s, and they've had 20 years of essentially no growth there. And we're doing all the wrong things. So we can expect, unless we have some changes philosophically about economics and personal liberty, we can expect this thing to drag out. Now, having a less income and less prosperous country is one thing. Why it is so dangerous, it does two things. One, it undermines our freedoms. And the other thing that it does is it causes a chance of violence. And this really bothers me about what's happening. You see what's exploding around the world. It's not only in England and Greece, it's around the world now, because information spreads. Everybody's unhappy. But everybody's unhappy because they're on our standard. It's the dollar standard. We are the ones who issued the gold for these 40 years. So we spread this information. Everybody trusted it. When it was being trusted, we could build on it until it got out of whack. This is why it's very, very dangerous. And another thing that bothers me a whole lot is because I've heard this too often. I've heard it in classrooms. And there's a lot of people who still believe this. They believe that war is good for the economy. And a lot of people will tell you, I'll bet you anything, that somebody's heard this before, that we never got out of the Depression until World War II came. It's not true. Oh, that is true. The unemployment rate went down because they drafted 16 million people. Sure, they're all employed, but half of them are, going overseas and getting shot and killed, but all the production, all the effort is to building bombs and planes that get blown up. The standard of living still went down sharply in World War II. We didn't come out of it until after. So it took all those years. But a war economy doesn't work. You say, well, isn't this true that, we're building this F-35 plane? Isn't that good for the economy? There's going to be profits by the company, and there's going to be good labor costs, and they're going to make a lot of money, and that's going to generate, a healthy environment. But what is not understood is that money that is spent on weapons, whether it's a drone missile that we blow up overseas or a bomber that we never use, it doesn't raise the standard of living. It doesn't help your medical care. It doesn't help your educational benefits. It doesn't help jobs develop in the marketplace. It's a distortion. It's a misdirection of capital. And therefore, a war economy is not a generally been pretty good at attacking liberals for the Keynesian economists. Always intervention, spend here, do this, and always intervene, and it's going to take care of everybody. It doesn't work. It's the practical strength of our country. But conservatives are equally led astray when they say military spend increase, y'all, and therefore it's across the board. We can address the entitlement system. That will not be easy. $65 trillion of obligations. This very year, we have increased our obligations with all this talk of cutting. We've increased our obligations by $5 trillion. We had the debt and obligations to go up. And this can't be taken care of. So all these talks of last week or 2 or months that we've been talking about cuts, and all this commission, this illegal and constitutional 12-member commission, they're going to come and cut. There are no cuts whatsoever. So they say, we're going to cut $2 trillion over the next 10 years. Well, it's $2 trillion over a $7 trillion proposed increase. And they call that a cut. There are no cuts. You know, the biggest threat to Washington would be if a secret got out that we would just freeze the budget. Just freeze the budget, everybody. Everybody gets what they got last year. To them, that would be $1 trillion cut in spending. That's the way they count in Washington. I think they all need to go back to school and study arithmetic. There is one other issue I want to touch on. I talked a lot about economics, and certainly personal liberty is a big issue for me because everything depends on liberty. If you have personal liberty, you'll have economic liberty, and you'll have personal liberty as well. But the other area where we need cut is something that I want to talk about, and that has to do with our foreign expenditure. We are now spending well over $1 trillion a year maintaining the empire. We're in 130 countries. We have 900 bases overseas. We're engaged in 5 wars. If you want to talk about Libya and all the other countries that we're bombing, and we're not winning those wars. We're losing those wars. So I have a very complex position, very complex issue on how we get out of it, how we deal with extricating ourselves from all this country. My answer to them is just come home and bring all the troops home. A president like myself would be able to do a lot quickly. Otherwise, a constitutional president will be obligated to work with the Congress and do things in a procedural way. But when it comes to what the executive branch does in foreign policy, I could, as a president, bring those troops home as quickly as we can get the ships over there and bring them home. It's not just for the Middle East and all the fighting and killing and dying that we're witnessing. But why are we in Korea? We went to Korea when I was in high school. I think it's time to come to Korea. We've been in Japan since World War II. I think it's time to come home. Why do we subsidize the German economy by providing their national defense and pumping in billions of dollars into their economy? So if you immediately just bring these troops home, that money would be spent at home, and that would be a bit of an economic boost as well. The wars that we have been fighting since World War II have not been declared. We haven't won a single war. And nobody knows exactly who the enemy is and why we're there and what we're doing. When I was on international relations, I'm still on international relations. When the resolution came up in 2002 to go into Iraq, the consensus was we had to go into Iraq. They had nuclear weapons. They were about to attack us, and Al Qaeda were there. Al Qaeda wasn't there. They had no nuclear weapons and all that, but they wanted to go, and the consensus was we had to go. We were still this post 9/11 atmosphere, but there was nobody in Iraq act that had anything to do with 9/11. So I argued the case before the committee that I didn't think this was very wise, but I'm going to offer an amendment to a substitute amendment. And I offered an amendment that said we will declare war against Iraq. And I said, I'm not voting for an amendment, but this is what you should do if you want to go to war. This is what you should do. Find out if you really want to go to war, declare the war, know who the enemy is, fight the war, and get it over with. But, happened during that debate. The chairman of the committee made a statement and really put me down on this. He says, I don't know why you're doing this. This is just you're monkeying around and you shouldn't be doing this. They were very angry because I made them have a recorded vote. Nobody voted for it. But the statement that the chairman said when I argued the Constitution, he says that part of the Constitution is anachronistic. We don't follow that part of the Constitution. But I guess I shouldn't have been so shocked. They don't follow that part of the Constitution about the money issue. And how about writing regulations? That's writing law. I thought it was the Congress was supposed to write law, not the agencies of government. So there are so many places where we have not followed our Constitution, and that is a big problem. Now, if this country had wanted to deliver to the federal government the responsibility to run our public schools, I would say if that's what the American people want, that's what you should change the Constitution. But we ended up with it. If we didn't change the Constitution and all these other issues, that means there's not much left. But by the way, on the education issue, I don't think the federal government should run the educational system, and I don't even think we should have a Department of Education. That'd be a good place to go. Regulate us even more so. They would be able to invade our privacy at will. And they pulled that out as soon as 9/11. They said, this is our opportunity. So within several days, it was on the House floor. And it was a bill that was very thick. It was 800 or 900 pages. It was only there for an hour and we had to vote on it. Nobody could have read it or understood it. And that was a vote called the Patriot Act. Patriot Act is not a good act. And that is the reason, of course, I voted against the Patriot Act. I was sitting next to another member of Congress, a friend, and somebody who was very responsible. You haven't read this bill. You're going to vote for this. You may be right if there's some bad stuff in there. But how can I, under these circumstances of post 9/11, within that 1 week, vote against a bill that's called the Patriot Act? How am I going to go home and explain this to my kids? I said, well, that's what your job is to vote the right way and go back home and explain it to you. What would happen if they would have named the Patriot Act the resolution to repeal the Fourth Amendment? Somebody would have voted for it. They always make it sound good, and it was going to make us safe. But I do not believe, just as I don't believe that you have to give up any sacrifices to be economically secure. It is very dangerous giving up any of your liberties, any of our liberties at all, to make us physically secure. I think we're less secure for it. But symbolically, all of us should be outraged on what we see on television when we finally get some pictures of what's happening to American citizens at our airport. If we can't be outraged by that, if we're not outraged by that and the system changes, there's something wrong with us, that we're not going to be very deserving of our liberties. But with the Patriot Act, it means that we are now, a suspected terrorist at the airport. We do not have constitutional rights at the airport. They don't have probable cause to do these X-rays and prodding and probing and going through all our material, all our luggage and all that. One way this could have been all avoided if the responsibility for security had been placed on the owners of the airline. That is where it should have been. And we should have had a lot more respect for the Second Amendment as well. Planes, if, just think when private companies haul money around, the armored vehicles, they don't have government agents on there. They have a couple guards and a couple guns, and they do pretty well. But before 9/11, it was said, do not resist. Pilots are not allowed to have guns. The airlines already by that time did not want the responsibility. Give the responsibility to government. And it was a perfect setup. And yet we went the wrong way. We decided to create this bureaucracy. And now we have the Department of Homeland Security. And there's hardly anything we can do in our lives without having the federal government meddling in our lives. But some of the worst things that they do, and this has been part of not only 9/11 and the Patriot Act, but also through another war that I find to be a very unwise war. The wars overseas are unwise and unconstitutional, and they make no sense, and they're bankrupting our country. But there's a war in this country going on that I think that we should address, and more people are addressing this now than ever before. This is this very unwise war against the use of medication and drugs. I don't think the federal government has any business telling you what to do with your own body. People will respond by saying, yes, but somebody might use some of these drugs that aren't good for them. But some people might eat too much, and some people might not exercise enough. There's a lot of things that people might do that wouldn't be in their best interest. But if we accept this notion that government can protect or should protect us against ourselves and our own habits, we're in big trouble, and I think that's part of the reason because we've accepted it. The government's going to take care of it. They have the FDA. They're going to tell us what to do. But guess who gets control of those agencies? Who gets control? What if you do want to take care of yourself? What if you believe in nutritional substances and vitamins and different products? What if you're so radical that you believe that you have the right to drink raw milk? This is the reason to do it. But they never tell you it's the drug companies and maybe the dairy industry or somebody else who's getting the protection. We should have a right to make our own choices. I do not understand why we as people have accepted this notion that we are so complacent about governments telling us what we can do with our own bodies, whether we smoke and drink and eat and whatever. But we're pretty good on the First Amendment. The First Amendment is a really risky amendment. You can actually say things that you want to say. You don't have the First Amendment because we have the right to talk about the weather. It's these controversial things. They talk about political ideas. That's not. And how about religious ideas? The right to practice your own religion. And we have diversity in our religion. Generally accepted. Sometimes I think people are less tolerant than they should be, of course. But basically we can. But when it comes intellectually and spiritually, we're pretty tolerant. But when it comes to allowing the government to tell us what to do with our bodies, we just forget about it. It happened about 100 years ago. For some reason, we allowed ourselves to take freedom and chop it into two pieces. We have personal liberty, which means your civil liberties and how you run your life and your spiritual life and your personal life. And the other half was economics. Why should they be separate? If you have your right to your life and your right to your liberty with the precondition that you hurt nobody else, why can't you then keep the fruits of your labor? And if you have that right, why wouldn't that apply to your personal habits? Why wouldn't you be allowed to gamble and waste your life at the same time, or do it for entertainment or whatever at the same time? Your economic liberties. But this division is totally unnecessary. And I think when I have a lot of young people who join the campaign, and they seem to grasp this very well, that they can see that personal liberty and economic liberty are all one and the same. experiment in this country, and it's been wonderful. We've had great blessings. We have been, I don't believe we are the freest country now, we have been the freest. One time we were the wealthiest, and we certainly aren't the wealthiest. We're the country in the biggest debt. But that great wealth and that great slipping by, slipping through our fingers, we're at a crisis point that we decide what we're going to do about it. And you can talk about the jobs and the economy, which is very important, but as a consequence, it's personal liberty that counts. If we had our liberties, if this bankruptcy came about and we lost all our wealth, if we really restored liberty and private property rights and contracts rights and sound money and freedom of association, I think we'd all be back on our feet in a very short time. And it's not like it's ancient. It's not like freedom is something that's been around for thousands of years. It's a rather recent experiment that we have had. In the last 100 years, it's been greatly reduced. So this is something that is new in many ways. But what is old? It's what we're talking about. The other candidates and the president and the Congress, they talk about authoritarianism. They always want to tell the government wants to tell you what to do. Now, I'm running for president. I would like to be your president, but my approach is different. My approach is different. I don't want to run your life. I know I can't run the economy, and I don't want to run the world either. Bad news is the country's in bad shape, and we all know it, and we're worried about it. I expressed my concerns about violence breaking out. But the good news is that the numbers of people who are cheering this message are growing. The number is getting much, much bigger. And young people, because they're attracted to it, gives me hope that the new generation that will take over will see the light and will come in this direction. But I don't say so often anymore that what we're doing in Washington today is dumping our debt on our kids and our grandkids. It's today. Every single day. When you see the depreciation of the economy and those who propose that we have war to stimulate the economy, it's on our doorstep. So we all have a lot to do immediately. And this is where I think we're seeing the progress. We first have to change people's minds. It's an intellectual violent revolution. Intellectually, you have to change people's minds and attitudes. That's why the signal that comes out of AIM is very, very important. Iowa is very, very important for that reason. But people criticize and say that's unfair. But I say it's very helpful and very fair to believe in a grassroots organization and an operation. So you can participate, and I hope you do. Let's go, Iowa! I hope you're there. Get it together, Fairfield! Somebody. We were planning on something like didn't wait to wait. We will consider coming. And I'm sure somebody around here this evening will be able to help you out and find out how to get you on the feet. And of course, I spent 99% of this talk talking about philosophy, because that is what's so important. Philosophy of liberty in this great country that used to believe in it is what we have to work hard to preserve. Thank you very much.